Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Just a couple months late, but finally here's my review of Dragons Rising Season 1 Part 2. 2 months have passed since the season was released, and it's safe to say Ninjago's fans definitely liked this season. But that wasn't a foregone conclusion. I did enjoy Part 1 very much, but there was kind of a cautious optimism towards Part 2. There were a lot of parallels between this season and 2022's Crystallized. Both had well-received first halves, but a second half disappointed many. And it just goes to show how drastically a season can change. Personally though, I'm happy to say Dragons Rising Part 2 was very good. I walk away from this season feeling confident in the show and excited about what comes next. This is a bright new future for Ninjago. Alright, so let's begin with episode 11. After Part 1 sets the foundation for the new show, Part 2 goes back to more traditional Ninjago. Once again, the ninja have to collect these items in order to stop this doomsday event, and in Dragons Rising Season 1, those items are the Dragon Cores, necessary to stop the Mergequakes. These items are introduced in episode 11, and I feel are introduced pretty well. I enjoy the backstory we get here. We learned that the first Fujitsu Master foresaw the Merge, and with the help of the 7 Source Dragons, created these cores to prevent it. The first Fujitsu Master also, as we learned, created other realms, which some people don't really like. Personally, I don't really see much of a problem. It's not really a big game changer. I think potentially a bigger issue is that Wu kept all this secret. I get that's his character flaw, but past seasons have addressed this. For example, in Season 7, Wu kept Necronix a secret and battled him alone. This completely backfired. And so the lesson is that it was okay to ask for help. He didn't have to face this challenge alone. I feel like Wu keeping the Merge a secret just kind of contradicts this. It's not a big issue, but just something I feel is worth mentioning. Anyways, as for episode 12, this episode got some criticism for being, I think, less of a plot-focused episode, but I felt it was pretty good. It's definitely not my favorite, but there's nothing really bad about it. I think what's really cool about the show is we get to see so many different types of characters, like Merlopians, skeletons. They just show up, and it's not really an occasion when they do. It's a normal part of Ninjago's universe now. And seeing these different types of characters really makes Ninjago's world feel so much more interesting. The twist in this episode is that the Merlopians are actually being controlled by the crab, and that someone implanted the tooth of the crab to make it massive. Hopefully this mystery actually goes somewhere, or connects to some greater story. What I also enjoyed here was seeing Eren inspire the farmers and lead them into action. It's a nice mini-story, and it ties nicely to his genuine desire to help people, as well as his enthusiasm about being a ninja. Meanwhile, Kai and Wildfire are going after the other Dragon Core, and God, Wildfire is very annoying in these first few episodes. But isn't that kind of the point? This is a character who is very immature and doesn't take anything seriously. She is annoying to us as the audience, and also, of course, to Kai. But her story is that change. It's how she changes into a more mature and just overall better person. Her pairing up with Kai is a very good choice. I mean, yeah, they're both fire elements, but also they both have hot-headed personalities, and because of that, they are bound to come into conflict. Kai's characterization as Wildfire's teacher is very well done, and especially in the earlier seasons of Ninjago, Kai was very brash and very hot-headed. And so to see him in this season teaching patience to Wildfire, it just goes to show how far he's come as a character. A great bit of characterization from Dragons Rising. What I want to discuss next is Zane's role in this season. Zane returns at the end of Part 1, and does have stuff to do here in Part 2, but it feels like there wasn't really much attention given to him, especially compared to Cole, who had less screen time, but a more impactful story. Zane is kind of secondary to other characters here, and a lot of what he has to do is just busy work. He's the one trying to figure out the monastery portals, and he helps the ninja the administration. I think Zane has felt very robotic in recent seasons, and this season, unfortunately, is no exception. There definitely are some funny moments for Zane, such as the scene where he's trying to win this Zane contest, but ends up losing. I felt that was very funny. But beyond that, there's just not much for Zane. And I was hoping we'd learn what happened to him after the merge, but that doesn't get revealed either. But anyways, I want to pivot now to Nia and Sora's plot, which brings them into contact with the last Jin. This was teased in the trailer, and it's so cool because it shows how much detail is being put into the show. Ninjago was such a small part of the original show, all we see of it is its destruction. And so I think that it's being brought back here is such a cool idea. I like Ericor, and I think he's a funny enough character, and I like that his story is essentially Nia and Sora just motivating him to use his powers for good. It's nice to see Nia and Sora just motivate him in general, and I guess offer him a new purpose. It's also really interesting that each wish Ericor grants makes Ninjago grow back a bit more. They're definitely setting the stage here for Ninjago's return, which will be really cool if it plays into future seasons. So after this little subplot, Nia and Sora venture to the land of lost things, and this is essentially where forgotten people and items end up. This is also where Cole's been. He's been protecting and looking out for these lost people, which is so in character for him. A big part of Cole's character is he's a voice for the forgotten. In Season 4, we saw him lead the Elemental Masters, and in Season 13, we saw him lead the Uplead back to the surface. So the overall premise of Cole being here shows that the writers really get his character. I also really like Cole's new powers, and the Land of Lost Things as a concept is just very interesting too. We also get a new Elemental Master named Geo, who is a Munce who looks like a gecko. His ability is Fusion, which is basically just as it sounds, the ability to make objects stick together. It's a pretty creative idea. And I like that we're getting to see non-human Elemental Masters. Now, earlier I said that Zane's story was just not as meaningful as Cole's, and it's time to elaborate on that. Cole actually exits the season early, and isn't in the final battle. It's kind of a surprising choice, but definitely a good choice, and it will pay off in the future. I say it's surprising because most people expected the season to kind of get the gang back together, but obviously this isn't the case. Wu, Cole, and Jay are all absent at the end. I see no problems with this, and I think it's good that the show is making the original ninja secondary. It allows for more focus on Eren and Sora. And with less main characters at any point, it's just easier to feature the cast. But let's talk about why Cole leaves, and why I feel is so strong. Cole leaves and goes on his own journey to search for Wu, who he's heard calling out to him. This is strong because originally it was Cole who was lost, and Wu recruited him to be a ninja. You might say this is similar to Season 8, where Wu was also lost in the time stream, and Cole had spent the entire year trying to find him. Yeah, these are definitely similar premises, but I feel they do have the potential to be different enough. I'm really excited to see where the story goes, and to learn about what happened to Wu. He's the only main character whose fate we don't know yet, but the amount of hints and foreshadowing done in the season was good enough. It's hinted that Wu's become some sort of ghost who's guiding the ninja, and he brings Kai and Nia together, and then of course Cole hears his voice as well. So yeah, I wouldn't say the season suffered without having Wu as the main character, and I feel like the amount of info we got was definitely the right amount. Lastly, I really love this final visual of Cole running off into the fog as he follows Wu. It's a very powerful note to end off his story here, and it's going to be his own personal journey into the unknown, not the full team. Alright, so moving on, episode 17 introduces us to the administration, which is by far one of the most creative ideas of the season. The administration is basically this behind-the-scenes bureaucracy, and they're in charge of making sure that everything in the realms is as it should be. They return people to their home realms, and make sure that dangerous artifacts are collected. This is a fantastic idea that really connects the realms and takes advantage of what the merge has to offer. I also love how futuristic it is, and also just how corporate it feels. As this corporate bureaucracy, that's a very unique idea for Ninjago, and we've never had villains like these guys before. There's also a fair bit of mystery here, such as the mysterious leader, the administrator, who I'm guessing is going to be a familiar character, maybe perhaps Pixel? The other thing about the administration is that this is where Jay is. Jay has presumably had his memories wiped, and now he's some sort of upper level agent. He has about 30 seconds or so of screen time, the least for any ninja, and the thing is, I don't really mind. This season had a ton to cover, and just setting up Jay's story is good enough. Some people were definitely disappointed by the lack of Jay, but me personally, I wasn't. These 30 seconds definitely catch you off guard, but in a good way. Seeing Jay just kind of show up and leave, it's a very interesting way to set up the story. So yeah, the stuff with the administration was very good. The setup for Jay's story is another story that I can look forward to in the next season. Alright, so let's discuss the villains next. The main backstory we get is the rise of Empress Beatrix, and I love how this flashback is staggered out throughout the entire episode. I think this is a good enough backstory, and I did really enjoy the flashbacks. It's definitely not Ninjago's most creative story though. It feels very similar to the Ice Emperor's rise to power. Both stories have the Emperor rise to power, with this outside figure who's using them for their own benefit. It's also similar to Season 14, where we have Kalmar kill his father, just like what Beatrix does here. It's definitely a good set of flashbacks, but this trope is definitely starting to get a bit old. What I found most interesting about the flashback is the fact that Beatrix has a twin sister, who has some sort of unknown elemental power. This was a pretty unique aspect, and again, another mystery for the future. Where is Beatrix's sister? Now let's return to the present. Beatrix is the season's main villain, and I'd say at the end of the day, she's an average Ninjago villain. There's nothing really too deep or too special about her character, but that being said, she's not a bad villain. I like how the season portrays her as just a complete lunatic who's willing to destroy the entire world just because the ninja embarrassed her. Beatrix is just completely fixated on control, and I think that makes her a good tyrant villain. I love seeing her get more and more unhinged in part 2, and at the end she's even firing on her own citizens. Raptor was also pretty good here. He was very much a comic relief character for most of the season, but he has a redemption here that's actually well developed. A few episodes earlier, Eren and Lloyd convinced the Sail people to spare Raptor because it's the right thing to do. And after he fails to get the core, he realizes the Empress is going to destroy everything, and ultimately he values living over serving the Empress. Not to say this is some sort of masterpiece, but wrapped into helping the Resistance, it does feel somewhat set up. I mean, why would he narrowly escape death and then immediately serve someone who's going to get him killed? But my favorite villain was actually Ross. And even though Ross is behind bars for most of part 2, the info revealed about his origins is genuinely so exciting. First of all, Ross is from the Wilderness, which is not as exciting as a Chima reveal. But what is exciting is that Ross was never actually working for Beatrix. Yeah, this whole time Ross has been working for an unknown master, and he only used Beatrix to capture a Source Dragon and use Imperium's technology. This reveal in the final scene of the season is so well placed, and adds so much to Ross's character. Previously, he was just Beatrix's second in command, but now we see him as this agent of a much greater evil. There's a lot of mysteries as we head into season 2, but the biggest is this question of who Ross's master is. I just love the idea that there's some much bigger threat behind the scenes compared to Beatrix or Imperium. It's just such a cool idea. And the fact that they want Source Dragon energy, and Ross talks about ancient secrets, is a fantastic place to end off the season. And there is a fundamental difference between the two Ninjago shows. In the first show, every season was usually its standalone story, with some key exceptions. But Dragon's Rising seems to have a plan for the next few years, and that's going to make this show's plot so much better. Unlike the first show, we're finally getting a Ninjago that has a big picture story. Plots that aren't just confined to one season. We're already seeing this in action, and season 1 sets up so many stories that future seasons will resolve. And having all these unresolved stories just makes the next season more exciting to me. This new structure is such an improvement, and it's going to be so much better for the show. So I guess the last thing we gotta discuss is the main 3 ninja themselves. Those of course are Eren, Sora, and Lloyd. These 3 were all fantastic in part 1, and I'm happy to say they still are. Let's discuss Eren first. A big plus to Eren's character is he's the only ninja who doesn't have powers, and I was really hoping part 2 would preserve that. And so far, I'm relieved to see that this seems to be the case. Eren is finally the perfect representation of this idea that heroes don't need powers, a message that the previous show was constantly contradicting. Eren doesn't have powers, but he does have spinjitzu abilities, which I feel is fine, because it's been established that anyone can learn spinjitzu. I also feel the compelling part about Eren's story is seeing him find this new family after the merge essentially wrecked his life. And I love in the finale he actually sees his parents in the merge quake. I thought it was a brief but nice moment for him, and I'm interested to see where it goes. This was a great introduction season for Eren, and he's a great representation of what it means to be a ninja. Moving on to Sora, I feel she actually had a more meaningful story. The setup in part 1 was fantastic, but part 2 really nails the landing. Sora's story is about feeling worthy about herself and claiming ownership over her powers. During much of the season, she believes her powers come from Ryu, and over the season she comes to believe in her own potential and abilities. I enjoyed her power-up scene in the finale, and seeing her embrace who she is in front of her disapproving parents. Speaking of which, I love how Sora's relationship with her parents is handled. And instead of making up with them, Sora rejects her unsupportive parents, which I felt was very powerful. This felt like a very real story, and I'm sure many people can relate to it. Lastly, I love Sora's speech in episode 19, and her role in leading the resistance. This felt like a very natural role for her, after of course Imperium treated her so poorly in the past. I love seeing her come back to Imperium, and inspire the citizens to rise up. So yeah, introducing new ninja definitely was the right choice. These 2 are fantastic characters, and I felt Sora's story had so much substance here. Our final topic for today is Lloyd. And he was a great character here. He fits the role of teacher really well. He had a lot of screen time with Eren. They had a great relationship. I really enjoyed seeing Lloyd motivate Eren and offer him support. In general, Lloyd feels very hopeful and optimistic in this season, which are great qualities for a teacher. And also an improvement over how bitter and pessimistic he was in Crystallized. I love his scene in the finale where he accesses the Dragon Cores, and yeah, seeing him take these risks That's what his character is all about. He's always willing to do what's right, even if it's risky. And I like how the scene called back to his lesson with Wu, which we saw in the first part. I did really enjoy the finale, and I love how the Mergequakes and the Storm, it was a great parallel to the original Merge. And seeing Lloyd set the Source Dragon free, another great scene, and it nicely brings the Imperium stuff to a close. But yeah, that is Dragons Rising Season 1. This season brought a lot of much needed change to Ninjago, and whether it was the episode length, the new characters, the Merge, the show is much better off because of those changes. Dragons Rising is precisely what Ninjago needed after Crystallized, and I'm so happy that this new show delivered. This season gets a 9.5 out of 10 for me. I would say it is a top 5 Ninjago season. It's clear that Ninjago has such a bright future ahead, and this is the most excited I've felt in a long time. And so this new era of the show is off to a very strong start. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone that you know. This video was long overdue, but I hope you enjoyed the final product. And let me know what you guys thought of Dragons Rising below, and I'll see you guys next time.